The defending Super Bowl champions are 1-0, and it wasn't easy. It was very frustrating at times, but it is still a dub that I think highlights a few things that we were looking for coming out of the preseason. So let's recap. Eagles against the Dallas Cowboys from night one of the NFL season. Night one of the NFL season is in the books, and it took a while, but eventually the Philadelphia Eagles come away with a 24-20 win over the Dallas Cowboys. This game was on track to be kind of an all-timer, right? And seeing a lot of memes this morning of people doing like a wake-up thing. It's like, wait, the under hit? Because it was looking, I think it was 48, 47, somewhere in there was the total. And whoops, because there was no punts in the first half. It was beautiful. And then they come out, okay, we have a field goal, a couple of stops, and then nothing the rest of the way. And I think people are kind of saying, well, it was the stoppage that kind of led to that. I do want to remind everyone that the unders hit a lot in the first few weeks of the season last year because players are going into preseason games less and less, and it is a little bit less sharp as we go along. There are going to be some, right? Like Mahomes isn't going to come out tonight in Sao Paulo and throw the ball backwards, right? Like these guys understand football, but there are going to be a couple of things that take a little bit of time to get into it. So that's a reminder when we do our pick per play, or a pick per game, sorry. Let's remember some unders on this one because that was certainly the case. And the defenses made the adjustments and the pressure really started to come and cause a few problems for these quarterbacks. But in the end, it was 24-20. And the big story from this game brought a lot of Seinfeld memes where there was a second spinner out there with the way it all went down. For those of you who haven't seen it, which I don't know how big the intersection of the Venn diagram is, people who are listening or watching this and didn't see the Thursday Night Football. But to recap, Jalen Carter, everything defensive player for the Philadelphia Eagles, who many people believe could win Defensive Player of the Year this year. He gets ejected before he's able to play a snap because there was an injury on the kickoff. And as they are all huddled around, Dak Prescott walks up toward Jalen Carter, and the camera very clearly sees Jalen Carter, as many people have pointed out with the memes and everything, hawk Tua and spit on that thing. As he spits on Dak Prescott, referee was like, hey, don't. And off he goes, kicked out of the game before it even begins. And so you are getting a lot of talk around that this is really dumb, this is irresponsible, you know what, and the line that you're hearing a few people use to kind of get that drive it home social media moment, he didn't just spit on Dak Prescott, he spit on all of his teammates too. And while some of that play was remarkably overdramatic and everything like that, there is a part of that, right? Like, he is a very important defensive piece. He is the first player in history from the defending Super Bowl champions to get kicked out on opening day. So he is an important part of a very, very good team. That being said, there was a little bit that came after, where we see in the halftime and then the halftime of the third quarter, as is tradition, because of a wicked lightning delay that was happening out in Pennsylvania. But we see that Dak Prescott, he's kind of chirping with him a little bit, and then he spits on the ground in front of him and gets that little, just a shit-eating grin on his face. And then from there, Carter, and gets kicked out. And so people say, oh, well, Dak spit at him first. And then after, Dak, just absolute trolling. And honestly, I think if you watch the preseason stuff, you'll know I'm not the biggest Dak guy. But I earned some respect on him because he is trolling the bejesus out of everyone right now. Where he's, I was just spitting on the ground. Spit on the ground 1,000 times a game. I don't, maybe some people have, different routines and different ticks that they aren't aware of, but I'm going to guess that Dak Prescott doesn't spit on the ground and then come up with just like a look on his face like he had there with Jalen Carter, causing Carter to spit on him. And this is one of those things where both things can be true. Dak Prescott absolutely spit toward Jalen Carter, and he meant to. and he was doing every bit of it to get under Jalen Carter's skin. And all of that is not to say that Jalen Carter is innocent in this, because Jalen Carter, what he did was really, really dumb. Like, both things are accurate. Is that Dak Prescott absolutely knew what he was doing, and Jalen Carter absolutely should have got kicked out of that game for taking the bait, and probably should be suspended now for doing that. You cannot spit on people. And apparently the big focus for the NFL is respecting others and everything like that. So that's why we get the flex that led to a penalty flag, which was remarkably frustrating in the moment. And I cannot stress enough how much I hate celebration flags and everything like that, and the taunting fouls and stuff. Like, there's some stuff, right? Like, we can all think of examples that shouldn't be, or that should be penalized, right? But you are playing a game where, like, just emotions, testosterone, all that stuff you want to throw out there is at an all-time high. And to expect someone to go into just this car crash with all this emotion and 80,000 people then to go crazy, and for them to not react in any way other than, thank you very much, sir, and just move on. I hate that. I absolutely hate that. Human emotion is a real thing, you know? So let these guys celebrate a bit. I'm not looking forward to the amount of celebration flags that we get in the first few weeks of this NFL season. But this was a focus for the league. And to Deeds' point in the YouTube chat, there is a difference between spitting on and spitting in front of. And one you can do. One you absolutely cannot do. And I don't care what was being said or done to draw that reaction out of you. You cannot do that. The one thing this really does do for Jalen Carter is it shows his impact, because they had some troubles, and a lot more trouble than I think they should have, with the with the offensive front of the Dallas Cowboys. And Javonte Williams has a couple of touchdowns in this game, helping me out in the Vampire League. And Miles Sanders has a big run, and Dak Prescott has a really good day. So I think that a lot of that maybe you can chalk up to maybe Dallas is better than I thought, but I do think a lot of that is the best defensive player on the other team missed the entirety of this game. And you can see, while this is, with Vic Fangio, a very well-coached defense, and one that is kind of a sum of the parts sort of a thing, you still have star players, and you still need your best players, and he is that for this defense, and to lose him, I think, was really impactful, and it shows how important he is to this defense. So hopefully lesson learned for him. On the offensive side, Deeds again in the YouTube chat, I can say this: A.J. Brown did nothing that game. That is very fair. A.J. Brown, I believe, 1 catch on 1 target for 8 yards. That is devastating for fantasy football owners, but that is kind of something that we had seen from this offense last year, where it's going to be just kind of spread around. It's not going to be, we need to focus on this guy, we need to get this going. The main focus of the offense is going to be Saquon Barkley. We absolutely need X amount of yards, so we're going to do this, is obviously going to be empty set, spread everyone out, hope you get them in man coverage, and Jalen Hurts can run for a first down. And even if we get a spy on the other team, we're just going to have our tight end box them out. It's not interference. It's not whatever, but it is absolutely just not, oh, I just happened to be here and the guy ran around him. That was designed and a very well set up play. But those are the things. It is Saquon's going to get his, and when we absolutely need it, third in the ball game, all those things, it's probably going to be Jalen Hurts running it. And then the rest are going to get theirs after it. I don't think we're dropping A.J. Brown or Devonta Smith or anything like that, but I do think this is a reminder that this is how this team is going to operate for this upcoming season, is that those are the guys, and then everyone else just kind of gets theirs where it all kind of fits in. This was an interesting one for Jalen Hurts for me, because like watching this game early on, I was like, oh, dude leveled up. Dude, I had he's the heart of the champion and all that stuff. And I think there are examples where someone goes out and wins a championship and they are able to level up, and they are just that guy now, right? I think the best example, just off the top of my head, in basketball is, you can see, we'll talk about him later, but Kawhi back there, on that team, Fred VanVleet goes out and just has the summer of his life after they have a kid, and he turns into kind of an all-star level point guard in a series and just stayed there for the rest of his career until some stretches last year. But you get this kind of proof of concept. You get this confidence like, hey, I am this guy. I can do that. And it's like a light bulb goes on. And it kind of looked like it was that for Hurts in the first half of this game. But then as the second half wore on, it wasn't there necessarily. And so I think you can see the good and the bad of Jalen Hurts in this game, where, like, with his legs, he is elite. And he is a pretty good processor, and throwing and all of that. But he was a good processor with dominance on the offensive line. And they had a couple of guys banged up, and I'm not exactly sure what their status is going to be. It's going to be something to keep an eye on going forward. But as that game wore on, you could tell he had kind of got a little bit used to just being able to down, sit, hut, and just sit for a little bit and be able to pick through, because his offensive line gave him that much time, right? Like, he had the most amount of time to throw of any quarterback in the NFL last year, and I would imagine that will be the same coming out of week one, especially with that first half. But as the pressure was starting to get there, mistakes were starting to happen. The offense wasn't moving nearly as well. All of a sudden, they're picking up 6 yards on 3rd and 8 and those sorts of plays, right? So you see the good, where he is incredibly athletic, he is a really smart quarterback, and he has all the tools to get everything where it needs to get to. But you can also see the bad, where maybe he isn't necessarily the passer, where we need to get this, like, we need to move this down the field. Bring in Jalen Hurts. You know, like, maybe he isn't necessarily that guy. They still come away with the win. I still think he's really good, but it is just when we are talking about why don't we include Jalen Hurts in the elite conversation, I think you saw why in the second half of that football game. The story with the Dallas Cowboys this whole season is going to be around Micah Parsons and the absence thereof, because it was talked about a ton on opening night here. They are the Cowboys. Parsons, it was such a unique situation, right? Like, it was a weird situation around all of that. In the NFL, we don't often see 26-year-olds who are among the best at their position traded right before the season by the Cowboys. But anyway, that's going to be the story all year. And you can see where it's going to be a problem, because the whole, we talked about it the other day, where Jerry Jones is like, you know what? We need to stop the run. And we couldn't last year. And so we went out and got a Pro Bowl defensive tackle and gonna stop the run this year. I don't know how much of last night's game you watched. I don't think I would categorize Dallas as a stops the run team. Like, you make the move, and like, this is, in a perfect world, you have a strength, and so maybe you can pull from that, address a weakness, and now you just have balance everywhere. And they do, but the problem is that you weakened your strength to try to strengthen your weakness, but that weakness is still the weakness, and now your strength is also a weakness. They went from a team that had an elite pass rusher that had some trouble stopping the run, to a team that couldn't rush the passer until 2 offensive linemen got hurt, and a team that couldn't stop the run for shit. That feels like a problem. So obviously, the whole thing was just a giant pissing contest, and I genuinely don't think that the number one reason they moved Micah Parsons was because, well, we need to get what's-his-nuts from Green Bay to help us stop the run. It was a contract dispute, and they did the best that they thought that they could, even though they failed miserably at it. But if you want to justify it to everyone that we need to stop the run, and you can squint and see that, right? With Saquon Barkley in your division, with Jaden Daniels, who is a mobile quarterback in your division. Giants are what they are. But like, you can see there are a couple of good running teams in your division that you're going to need to try to shut down. So you can kind of squint and see where he was getting at. The problem is, this is still a passing league. So yes, there are times where you are going to need to stop the run, but more often than not, you're going to have to figure out how to get to the quarterback. And they kind of had to sell out to try to get to the QB, and also have Pro Bowlers go down with injuries on the other side. So I think that this is probably, it might just be confirmation bias. Maybe this gets figured out, but every bit of that, especially in the first half, looked a whole lot like what everyone assumed it was going to be without Micah Parsons on the offensive side. On the defensive side. On the offensive side, I have to say, again, I'm not the biggest Dak guy. I think he is wildly overrated by the people who overrate him. Excuse me. He looked really good in this game, and they were kind of gushing about him during that the timeout that they had because of the weather, where he's gotten himself into good shape and he's doing all these things, and they're talking about how bricked up he is after they show a shirtless photo of him, or a shirtless video of him getting ready in the locker room. It was getting a little bit like, okay, we get it, but at the same time, like, he does look good. He is maybe a touch slower than we are used to seeing from him, although that's never really been his bag necessarily, but it did seem a little bit slower, but he was slinging it, and they were moving the ball very effectively. And then the drops happened, and this is, I think, going to be a problem for them. Because, like we talked about, I don't think the defense is going to be very good. They held up in the second half a little bit. Again, injuries happen. But you look at this team, and it's one of the things we talked about in the preseason. There's just not a lot of talent there. CeeDee Lamb is really good. Dak Prescott, your mileage may vary. But Pickens, Williams and Sanders are, okay. Ferguson, Like, they just have a lot of mid on the team. And then the defense isn't great. And the offensive line is okay and can hold up at times when you don't have to face the best defensive tackle on the other team. They are going to need CD to basically be perfect if they're going to win these games. And he was until he wasn't. And he had a couple of back-breaking drops. Now, that's what the money is for, right? Like, he is supposed to be the number one, and you need your number one to come up with those plays. But this is going to be, I think, the story of Dallas all season long, is that they are going to have to play perfectly for every minute of a football game, or else they're not going to win that football game. They just do not have the talent to have any margin of error there. So you can't afford your guy Lamb to be dropping the ball on a deep crosser on 3rd and 7, or on a play in the second quarter to try to keep things going in what looks like it's going to be an offensive shootout. The ball on the left side on, was it 3rd down or 4th down? But the dive that he had to make, that one obviously, like, that's not on him. I think if I am looking at a picture and the receiver is making eye contact with me and no part of his body is touching the ground, I'm not going to put that on him. That is, like, it's a small window that they can get it into. If he does catch that, he is getting it knocked out of there by the safety that's coming over anyway. That was a tough play. But again, it kind of speaks to the overall point with Dallas. It's that everything is going to have to be executed at an absolutely perfect level for this team to be in games this season, and I just don't think they got the guys to do that. So maybe a lot of confirmation bias in this game, but there was a lot of things that kind of drove home some points we were talking about in the regular season. One other point, we had talked early, and I wish I would have kind of hammered home this one a little bit more, and it's making me look at some guys a bit differently, and we'll talk about them in a second here in the preview. But Javonte Williams, we had said in the offseason, or we had said in the preview, that he was one of the guys who had their value in fantasy boosted up the most by how the offseason went. Because he goes to the Cowboys, they don't really have a whole lot of competition for him there, and then they don't draft a running back high. They draft Jaden Blue. He was inactive for the game on Thursday. All of a sudden, maybe Javonte Williams isn't the most talented dude, but holy hell is that volume going to be there. And I also may push back a little bit on the talent thing. He wasn't great last year, but it was his first year back from injury. And we have seen with injuries like the one that he had, it takes time to kind of get back to your full form, right? So I do think that I slept on Javonte Williams a little bit too much in fantasy, and I'm happy I was able to pick him up in the Vampire League, but I think that he is not RB1 or anything like that, but I think he's going to be a solid running back option for the Cowboys as the season rolls on. So that is the recap of what went down in the NFL on Thursday between the Eagles and the Dallas Cowboys. Make sure you follow me on social media. I am at Primetime Klein on Instagram, X, TikTok, Threads, Blue Sky, all of those places. Make sure you are following me all over on social media so you get updates from Couch Potato Diaries.